Hello, and welcome back to our series where we are building a people and culture management system. This series is brought to you by Prairie HR Solutions. My name is Jake Finger, founder and principal consultant here at Prairie HR Solutions. And this is part two of a sub series, I guess you can say. We're creating a filterable or a drill down switch functionality here within our compensation dashboard. Now, previously, this was a one level dashboard to where you can essentially just filter the data by division, job title, functional family, all these. And what we're undertaking now is being able to drill down by division. And the reason for this is depending on the access that you're giving this dashboard. I mean, if you're giving it to the C suite who has essentially control over or sight over the entire company, that's one thing. And that's what this started out as. That's what this base dashboard was. But if you were wanting to bring in department heads, division heads, whatever you call them in your organization, and you wanted them to only, not maybe only, but have access to drill into their divisions, like say you want the CFO to be able to look directly at finance or anybody and only see the finance people. So we have that already with our division, but the intent is to then be able to select the job titles for that division and then populate only that data here. So the approach that we're doing here is a simple switch. And what this switch is intended to do is to lock this position. And it does. I mean, you can see that we can't open it. What we'll do is we'll also take this and make this background color maybe a gray or something to show that it's locked. We'll do that first thing. And what we did last video was we created this locking function, and we also worked on this piece right here, which allowed us to filter data by the division and then take that variable and filter it down further by a job. So what the idea is now we need to take this job filter array, pull out all the jobs. We can use a map for that. Pull out all the jobs and then use that data to populate this drop down box here only for the finance jobs. So let's actually work on turning this gray here real quick, and then we'll do the actual code or the app script code to filter this down. So let's come over here to our JS, and you'll see this is our division lock. Now, the way we're approaching this is very, very basic, very elementary. We're not cutting corners yet. And what I mean by cutting corners is we are doing it at a very base level. So there is going to be a lot of redundancy initially. And once we get it functional to the way that we want, then we can go through and actually clean this up, consolidate it, and make it run a lot faster. We are going to have some performance slowdown just because of all the things that we have happening, but we'll clean that up. So if you know code, no JavaScript, I'm probably going to drive you crazy here, but I want to take it at a very basic level first so we can understand the why and what is happening when before we really just clean and work on performance. And the idea of this is to essentially create two different paths. So this is going to be one path, and this is our compensation. Anytime somebody filter our compensation filter function, anytime somebody clicks a select box, it runs this whole code and then updates the data based on that selection. So this is going to be one path. If you think of it as a river, we're throwing a giant boulder in the middle of it and forcing it to take two paths. And that Y where it splits is that checkbox. So that checkbox is basically forcing it to go one way or the other. And that's kind of how we're going to write our code, sort of in that mentality and story. But let's come up here and see where we're locking it down. So we are locking it down here, and what we can do is add another little piece in here. Style, background color, and we will make that background color equal to, let's just say gray. And then we're going to need to do the same exact thing here when it's unchecked. When we free it, we are going to need to make it nothing. Okay, so let's save this and see how that looks there. Okay, so it's free. If we do that, now it's gray and locked. If we unclick it, free and open. Okay, good. So now we know that is actually locked. So that's good. Okay, so now what we can do is, instead of working on this, let's go back to our analytics, because now what we want to do, let's run this to remind ourselves what we actually have. Okay, so this is empty, empty, and the reason it's empty is because we're not passing anything through. This here should be div. Yeah, we're not passing this through yet because it doesn't have anything. And this div is going to filter the data by, human resources we have up here. And then it's going to get us the jobs. So these are all the human resource employees. We have, I believe, 78 of them. And then the job is empty. The reason the job is empty is because we obviously don't have any accountants in our human resources division. So let's say director, and then we'll rerun this. And as you can see, it first filtered out all the human resources employees, and then it filtered out all the human resources director employees. It filtered all those arrays that have human resources director at this 18th index. So now what we can do, now that we have this job filter, this secondary filter, we can then pull out all those jobs. So let's come down here and let's create another variable. And let's just call this variable filtered job list. And this filtered job list is going to be equal to this division filter. We can just simply do the division filter because we really don't need this job filter piece here. Not yet anyway. We're just working on grabbing the job titles for this division filter. And what we're going to do is we are going to map that. Remember, map is going to take something and return something based on an index. So what I mean by that is we're going to go for every row, and we are going to pull out and create another array of only certain elements. Now that certain element is our job title. And then we can log this out and see what this produces. Okay, so let's run it. Okay, let me see if I can make this a little bit bigger for y'all. There we go. So you'll see that, yep, it pulled out everything, all the employees and the human resources. And then, of course, it just did it by a job. But what we're wanting was a one-dimensional array of all the jobs based on those employees. Now, you'll see that there's a lot of redundancy here. There is a lot of duplication. And what we're going to use this array for is to populate the drop-down box. We need to update that job title drop-down box with this array. So unfortunately, if we did that, it would essentially populate human resources generalist. The next line would be HR generalist, and the next line. So we would have a lot of excess fluff in here. So what we want to do is we want to trim that down. We want to remove the duplicates of that. And what we can do to remove those duplicates is we can actually use what's called a new set. Now, a new set doesn't necessarily create it doesn't actually create something new, because what it does is set is not itself an array. What it does, it creates a set object which automatically removes it, and then the new set piece converts that set back into an array. So it takes it to an object, removes it, creates those two values, and then, or those two keys, and then it turns that back into an array. So that's how it works. But how we do that is, let's just take this, and what we're going to do is encase this into an array, because that's how we want this to end up. And what we're going to need to do is this dot, 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 and we've done this before. You can watch the previous videos on what actually is happening here. And then we want to create a new set. And that new set is going to be encased in parentheses. So it kind of looks like that. And what we need to do is then give it something to run, and that is that. So now let's save this and then run it and see how that returns. As you can see, it removed all the duplicate values. So now what we can do is, instead of logging that, because what we're going to do is take this now, and we are going to not pass this div through it. We're going to pass this filtered division through it. And then whatever comes through here, it's going to filter by that, and then it's going to pull out those jobs. So instead of this logger log, what I'm going to do is a console log, so we can pull up. If you're following along, I suggest you do this piece, because then you'll see what is actually being pulled from our code here in when we hit F12. So let's save this, and then we'll go back over to our total rewards JS, to this div filter lock, which is what this is running. And we need to create this pop filtered comp DD just to show what's coming out of this. So let's come up here and do pop filtered comp DD, and that's just going to take some filtered data. And what we're going to want to do with this is simply log that out as well. And since we're doing it here, I don't think we need to do it over here on our analytics side, so we can just get rid of this. But what we want to return is this filtered job list. Okay, perfect. So now let's save this, and then we'll come back over here to our page here. And then let's refresh this. Now we'll hit F12. If you're following along, press F12 and you'll see it. So the data fetched is array 500. That's exactly what we're wanting. So now let's trigger one of these pieces. So the reason why it's all squished over is because I have the F12 I have the F12 over here open, so it squishes the screen over. That's why it looks kind of wonky. But now let's trigger that function. Let's just do divisions. Now this is the normal all employee division, so we shouldn't see any console, or we shouldn't see that console log that we just put in here, but we do have 80 employees. It's our 80 employees. So now let's press our little button here. And what ends up happening is it then runs that code and gives us a new console log with 3 employees, or 3 titles: accountant, finance specialist, and finance coordinator. So if we were to come back over here, let's just make sure that it's doing what it's supposed to do. And let's filter this out, go to division, finance, and as you can see, we have finance coordinator, accountant, finance specialist. So it looks like we have 3 different job titles, and our job titles do match that. So our function now is working as intended. Now we just need to, well, populate those values within this job title. Now this job title has stuff already in it, right? I mean, it already has finance coordinator, building technology. So what we're going to have to do essentially is figure out a way to change that, to take those values and add it into here. So we need to come back over here to our code here, and instead of this console log, I mean, we can leave it there. What we need to do is we need to essentially grab this where we populate our information. Again, I know we're repeating stuff. We'll clean it up later. And what we're going to do is, instead of running a for each on that data, what we did, we need to do is run a for each on each one of those 3 values. So we need to pass that here, and for each of those categories, we're calling it, we want to create an object variable, which is creating an option, which is that select down piece. And then we want to give that value, that option, a value of whatever that category is, accountant, finance specialist, finance coordinator, whatever. And then the same thing with the text content. And then we want to set those options. We want to append the child in sequence. Now, it's not going to be a drop down. We need to come up and grab that job title. So let's create a variable, that job title drop down list. So let's just call it jobs DD for now. And that's going to be our document get element by ID. And that is going to be comp jobs. Let's just make sure that's what it is. Comp jobs. And we'll end that. And then we simply need to pass that here. Okay, good. So now when it receives this, it'll give us that console log, but then it'll start filtering this and populating it in this jobs DD. So we saved it. Let's come back and refresh this. And I know you're not able to see the drop downs just because I'm not sharing that full screen, but we have a list of all of our drop downs, and it ends, the last item is human resources director. So now let's run this, and I'm going to show you what happens. Let's select finance, It'll go through it. It'll do its thing. And then if we open up this job titles again, nothing happened. It's still at HR director. But then once we lock this, it's going to run it again. And then now we don't have the spinner assigned here. We'll have to put that there. But now when we scroll down, it doesn't end at human resources director. All those previous values are still there. What it did was it took accountant, finance specialist, finance coordinator, and added it on to the end of it. So what we actually need to do now is figure out a way before we populate that to essentially clear this job title box and then populate it fresh. And if we removed it, it stays exactly the same. So anytime that we are building a cascading drop-down box, there's going to be a certain level of removal and repopulating. And to do that, what we're going to need to do is come back over here to our code. And before we do any of this, we want to take that jobs DD and we want to clear it, completely clear it. And the way we do that is we need to take the inner HTML and set that to nothing. So that is going to clear it out. Now, unfortunately, as you will see, it is also taking away, let's find a drop down one, this piece and this piece. So we're working on this job title piece. So it's actually going to remove this as well. So when we go back and repopulate it again with normal data, we are going to have to address that. But for now, let's just get one step at a time done. Let's remove it. Okay, we'll refresh. So you can see we have everything, our comm specialist. Yep. We can do our division. Let's do human resources now. Human resources updates. 78 human resource specialist. We're pretty thick. And then let's lock it. And you'll see that human resources generalist and human resources director are there. Now, we haven't built in the function piece here. If we select human resources generalist or human resources director, this is company wide. So we haven't actually drilled in and got that filtered data yet. And that's going to be this if statement piece. So one thing that you may have noticed is, say we'll go facilities. We're still building on additional levels. So initially when we pull this open, we have HR generalist, HR director, and then it starts over with all the job listing. So we're still populating it over and over and over again, which we'll have to address. But notice, first things first, notice that we lost this, that all jobs. And then when we lock it and it does its population, it's giving us the first value of that. So what we want is we want to make sure that we still have this all jobs piece, because the all jobs piece, works with our reset values. Now what we could do is we could try and simply reset them again. And we may end up eventually doing that, but let's work on that first step here. So we cleared it. Now what we're going to need to do is to reset its category information. So we need to take this JSDD thing this variable here. And right after we clear it, we need to then do something else. We need to rebuild that option value all jobs piece. And to do that, it's going to be, again, inner HTML. And this time the inner HTML, remember, we're setting the HTML, not just the content, not the text, not the value. We're setting an actual HTML piece. So we're creating an element which allows us to create this option. And let's just do the value, because that's what we're going to need to set to. The value is going to be equal to all jobs. So now, before we even start filling this, we're setting that initial value to be all jobs. And then put that there. So now what we need to do is, after that's run, well, here, let's save this and see how that works first. Kind of show you what I mean here. So we'll refresh this and then select a division. We'll do executives this time. So this should be now, notice how it doesn't go away and it doesn't populate, but, oh, that's because we don't have it locked. Now, once we lock it, you'll see clears. And then once it repopulates it, okay, it's not repopulating anything. The value is there. As you can see, there is a value, or not a value, but there is a, that inner option is there. It just doesn't have, you know, that text value. It doesn't have that all jobs displaying. It's there, just not present. So what we're going to need to do is we can come back here and create a new line, because now we just created that option. Now we need to show that option. And we showed that option by, let's see, where is it here? Oh, here it is right here. So you'll see that what we did was we went through like this for each. We took the category of every line there and set the value to that category and then the text content to that category. So these are the options. So when we come over here and see these options, this would be value all jobs, text all jobs. So what we're needing to do is actually set the value and the selected. So I'm going to try something here, and I have absolutely no idea if this is going to work, but because we're not going to be able to set that text content. I mean, the value's there, but we're not actually going to be able to set the text content because it's not simply it's a different type of option. I guess is the easiest way to put it. So instead, what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to take this piece where it says all jobs. So this is value. We're going to change this to single quotations because that's going to mess us up here. Okay, so we'll put this in double, and then we need to create that selected piece here. And that selected piece is going to be all jobs. And then it's going to end. So let's make sure that this is set up right. Okay, so here's our option. Then our option value is going to be that. And then that's going to end. And then this is going to be all jobs. So if you look at this, and then if you were to come back and look at the actual page here, it's going to look very similar. This is how we set up our options. So now let's save this and see how that works. Okay, so here's our selected. We can obviously have all of our drop downs there. We'll do finance. Changes everything like it's supposed to. We'll lock it. And then you'll see that it ran it. And now we have all jobs plus those other lists. And then when we run it, it should just do everything. Okay, good. Good. So now we have that built out. So now what we need to do is work on some other pieces, because what we're running into is, let's just check this. Let's go to facilities. And once we lock facilities, it'll go through, it'll do its thing. And now we have, say, hygiene and sanitation specialist. But you'll notice that it changes this to all divisions. So the last thing I want to do for this part of the episode anyway, is I would like to, we have to intercept this. So when this changes, this should not change if that box is checked. If it's not checked, we just let it go. So let's come over here and see exactly where that is occurring. Everything is being called to this comp, to this get comp filter piece. So what we can do is, before anything here runs, we can check an if statement to see if that's checked or not. So let's come down here and find this. Okay, so blue. So this whole thing is what we want to run if the box is unchecked. Okay, so this is going to be essentially the else. So now the if statement is going to be if, let's see, what's it going to be? This checkbox. If the checkbox is checked, then what we don't want to have happen is for that division to change. So we need to grab this and this, grab this and this, put this in here before we even run anything. And if this div is checked, true, like that, then we want to do something. Well, we also want to do all of this. I want to do all of this. Where is it? There we go. So we want to do all of that. And then else, what else we need to do is we need to we got the value, we got that. Okay. And then if it's not, what we need to do is then do this stuff. Before we do the spinner control. Okay, so what essentially we did was we took all that and moved it down here. We copied it again before this comp filter even runs. It's going to check to see if that division check switch is checked. If it is, then it's going to do all of this. And Now where it actually clears it, it's resetting these values. But it shouldn't get to this unless that box is checked. So let's see how this actually runs. We'll come back over here, we'll refresh this. So this should not reset if that is checked now. Okay, so if we close this, should update this box, and it does. We have a developer, coordinator, manager, analyst, specialist, kind of odd. So now if we select one of these boxes, like say analyst, that information technology should not change. And it doesn't. And then we'll check manager. Kind of interesting that it's changing back. So we'll have to look into that and figure that out. But we got this piece here locked in. We just have to figure out why this is going. And I think I have a reason why. Is because it's running it over again. So what's ended up happening is it's doing this division. It's doing this one and then this one. So we need to clean up one of these. So we need to either get rid of this, such as we'll have to figure that one out. We'll do that the next episode, but right now what we've done is we've essentially created a piece here to where we now have a cascading drop-down box based on this. And the first thing the next episode will do is we will clean up this reset thing, because what's happening is this is being triggered and then essentially it's doing this. But we kind of still want it to do that, just in a different way. So you'll see that this probably took care of it. But what we're needing to have happen is, even though this isn't going to change, we don't necessarily want it to reset because we still want it to do something here. So that's what we'll build on the next time there. But we have this functionally locked now. This is now a cascading drop down. The next episode, what we're going to do is we're going to take the value of this and then send it over to our chart to actually populate based on that value. So I hope this was informative. Until next time, I look forward to it. We'll get this thing wrapped up. And until then, please take care.